Hello and welcome to the Comic Conspiracy. I actually forgot to write down what number episode this is. It's 252 for the week of. It's also not a normal recording day, so let me see what day it would be when this goes up. Yeah. March 15th, 2016. My name is Ryan Higgins, who is here with me this week. Let's start on the left, and then we'll introduce our special guest.
That's where we always start.
I know.
Brock Sager.
Bryce.
Toby.
Charlie.
And we have a very special guest from the great state of Texas over the magic of Skype. You know him from the Nerds Without Pants podcast.
No pants.
No pants. Julian Titus.
Oh, thanks for having me. And hopefully you know me from the Nerds Without Pants podcast. Hopefully the plugs have been working. I will say that I am wearing pants tonight because I didn't want to make Brock feel uncomfortable.
Yeah,
so.
it would be a little too weird. I'm sorry.
Well, that makes one of us.
Yeah, I took my pants off. I thought that's what we're supposed to do.
Well, you are on Skype video right now with us, so most people, when they are on Skype video, are not wearing pants, so I'm actually a little confused. But
This is trove. I've got some very nice Batman pajama pants on, though, so...
I'll allow it.
There we go.
I'll second the allowance.
Julian, you've been a long-time listener of ours and a supporter of ours and a backer of ours, and we're very happy to have you on here.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Very long-time listener from the beginning, so...
Nice.
Wait. Ryan Standard, I'm sorry, it was just a two-man podcast insert.
I apologize for every episode. It was just me and Brock, including last week's.
They're good.
It wasn't just us.
Them.
We had a guest.
But you were wearing an old-school Iron Man t-shirt, and as you previously said, you were wearing Batman pants. So I would take it you're a fan of comic books in some fashion.
Just a tad. Okay. Just a little bit, yeah.
As you know, we like to do our little secret origins on here when people that we have on for the first time. What is your secret origin for comics? What did you start reading first? When did you start reading? What are you reading now? What's your history?
Well, it's funny because every time you talk about this, it always makes me smile because I actually started with licensed books. My first comic book was Transformers, the original Generation 1 book.
That a lot of people around...
Stuff.
The Marvel stuff, right?
Yeah.
The Marvel stuff.
A lot of people around our age. I'm not sure how old you are, but I'm mid late 30s ish or something in that kind of time frame.
30s, so you're old man.
Mid to late 30s. Transformers, G.I. Joe, those Star Wars comics. Those are always the kind of the first books for a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was funny because I actually remember before I could actually read, my dad sitting me on his lap, and I remember the issue. It was the issue of Transformers, and Transformers fans will know this. It's the one with the mechanic where he faces off against Ratchet. And I remembered seeing the name Jose, and my dad reading it to me as Jose. But I was just starting to be able to read, and I was like, that doesn't seem right. That looks like Josie. And that's a very, early memory of mine. And then from that point on, that's really all I read. But right when there was all the hubbub about the death of Robin, and even my parents heard about this, and they decided to go to the comic book store, and we ended up getting the trade paperback for A Death in the Family. And that was my first superhero comic book, which is a really fucked up Batman comic to read as your first Batman book.
One of my all-time favorites.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, but being 9 years old and seeing the Joker bludgeon a Robin to death with a crowbar, it's kind of a, puts an indelible mark on you. And but the same day, my dad decided to pick up two comics for himself, two books that he read when he was a kid, because he hadn't been to a comic book store in years, and it was Iron Man and Silver Surfer. And it was weeks before I finally convinced him to let me read them. And that's when I was hooked. It was those two books. And we're talking Silver Surfer right when Ron Lim was picking up steam. Cool. And we're talking Iron Man right after Armor Wars, right after Tony Stark got shot by Kathy Dare. So we're talking about just some fantastic stories in both of those books. And so I was there at ground zero, seeing Infinity Gauntlet happen, as a kid, this being my first introduction to comic books.
So Surfer, that would be in the 30s or 40s, kind of right? Issue 30, 40, somewhere in that range.
Somewhere in there, yeah.
Before Thanos started showing up.
Right, yeah, just before. I forget what the first Silver Surfer issue I read was, but yeah, Thanos showed up not too long after I started picking it up.
Yeah.
And then that led into Darkhawk, which will lead into our topic later on. But Darkhawk was another one. For a long time, I didn't read a lot of books. It was just a few. And then I got into X-Men.
And then you're reading quadrupled.
But also X-Men #1, 1991. It was that first splash page with Magneto, where my jaw dropped, and I said, I want to draw comic books.
Yeah.
Nice.
And I remember reading that comic book cover to cover like 5 or 6 times that same evening. Like the first time just reading it, and then every other time just like poring over every panel. And I really tried to make a go of that for a long time, but, dreams die, and I just didn't make it. I never was up to snuff.
Not Professor Xavier's.
Not Professor Xavier's, but I'll never forget looking at that first issue of X-Men back then. Just an indelible mark on my childhood.
Yeah.
Nice.
Greatest comic ever published.
So you're probably at this point heading into high school, maybe college in a little bit. What did you read the entire time? Did you keep going, or did you kind of lose interest as other things became more important?
I fell off right after, well, not right after, but around the time that Heroes Return happened. Like, I loved the Iron Man run right after Heroes Return. Mm-hmm. And then for whatever reason, I ended up falling off. I think what ended up happening was my comic book store closed, and I just didn't end up, there wasn't like a good one that was nearby.
I say this a lot. The most often heard excuse I've heard of people quitting comics short of monetary reasons is a store closed and I had nothing else to go to. And
it's rough. Yeah.
Even today, that affects so many people when a store closes near them. You think, people just order it online. Most people don't do that. They want to go into a store. Even, especially in the 80s, 90s, 2000s. But even today, I hear it a lot.
Or people move and there's no new store.
Or they have nothing near them. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why.
Yeah, and I was out of it. Oh, sorry.
No, you're fine. That's why we ship. I was just plugging the shop.
Oh, yeah, and I gotta say, by the way, because you guys don't plug the Patreon stuff enough, but, the $50 tier, I think, is the one where the, Comic Conspiracy sends you some books. And the way that Brock Sager packages this stuff is freaking phenomenal. And it's good stuff, too. So if you've been thinking about contributing to the Patreon and you want to maybe bump it up a little bit, you're going to get some good stuff, and it's going to be packed really, really well.
Speaking of which, we still have to ship stuff out.
So I definitely recommend it.
Nice.
Or just order stuff from them, because, they do a fantastic job with that stuff.
Brock's head threw 3 times the size that day.
Yeah. So then, I fell off for a while, and then, you've heard this time and time again, New 52 brought me back in.
Nice. So all the way from, like, late 90s to early 2010s.
I came back and dabbled a few times. I got into DC around the time that Tony Daniel was doing Batman. Ed McGuinness was on Superman, so I picked up some stuff there. Got really hardcore into Young Justice and Impulse, which, again, we're going to talk about that later. But so there was that time right there, and that's because I was actually working at a video game store, and we started ordering comics through Diamond. So I had a really easy way to pick up my stuff every month, and got back into it for a little bit, but then again, just kind of fell off. And then New 52 brought me in a big way. But now I'm down to just one DC comic, which is Batman. I'm still on Batman. And so now I've overcommitted with the all-new, all-different Marvel. I picked up way too many books on that, so I'm going to have to start cutting it here in a little bit. But right now I'm kind of mostly Marvel.
Well, 2/3 will be canceled before the end of the year, so you don't have anything to worry about.
Well, that's what I figured at the time. I was like, well, this stuff looks really good, but it's probably going to last for about 6 issues or 8 issues, or they'll relaunch in 12. So
poor Red Wolf. Poor
Black
Weird
Knight.
World. Poor Black Knight.
Oh, Weird World also?
Oh, there's no way.
Venom, Space Knight.
We could talk about some of these Marvel sales in the February sales charts here in a few minutes.
Yeah.
Huh. I'm half surprised about Venom. I'm kind of surprised about Weird World.
Venom's actually a little
picked up. I'm not surprised at all by Red. Well, maybe this is a good segue.
Yeah. Well, let's so are you going to follow any of the DC Rebirth stuff? Do you plan on jumping on board with that?
I haven't really looked at the books yet.
Nothing has been announced.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I'm hesitant. I know I'm dropping Batman when Snyder leaves.
Well, if Tom King is still going to be, if Tom King is taking over, you might want to reconsider. He is, I think, the best new talent Marvel or DC has had in years.
So, we'll see. I mean, the fact that it's going bi-monthly is a little bit of an issue, but I've been reading the Eternal books, so I guess I don't really have an excuse because I've been doing that. I read both of the Batman Eternal books, so I really have no leg to stand on with that argument. So we'll see.
Be bi-monthly?
Bryce apparently doesn't listen to this podcast. Yes,
I listen to every episode except for the ones I'm on. I can't stand my voice.
There's going to be I believe 35 titles as part of DC Rebirth, and 17 of them are bi-monthly.
Okay, so question.
Something like that. Something
Are
close.
you going to troll DC for double shipping as much as you troll Marvel for double shipping?
Again, Bryce, if you listen to the words that I am saying, when Marvel started double shipping, I said, wow, this is going to kill Marvel. People won't be able to afford it. This is going to squander the creativity and the quality of the titles. And, I mean, I feel like a presidential candidate here, because I feel like one thing that I said once that I have completely changed my mind on and brought up multiple times, people still bring up that original thing. Double shipping was a huge boom for Marvel. They kept quality high. They kept the books coming out on time. Again, not everyone, but it was a huge success. So the fact that DC is doing it, to me, also, I believe is a good idea. Now, obviously, we'll see what happens when the books actually ship.
Well,
but
they're also doing all of them are going back to $2.99.
all $2.99 as well.
Yeah, so the Batman's not going to be a $3.99 book anymore.
Right.
It'll be
It's a
$2.99.
$6 book. Then.
Well,
Yeah.
it's a $6 book, but it's 40 pages. You know.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I love bi-monthly books.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and you know some of those books will start to fall off the bi-monthly schedule as they introduce new titles. There's no way they're going to keep Aquaman bi-monthly for 10 years.
Aquaman is one of the bi-monthly titles?
It's basically all the major
my God.
characters and titles.
Oh my God, good luck
Well,
with that.
and they're also, they would have been about 4 or 5 years away from Action Comics hitting issue 1000, but by going bi-monthly, they're only like 2.5 years away. So
It's kind of cool.
they're gonna get that Action Comics 1000 out a lot faster than I think initially anticipated. So
That's cool.
should be good.
And that will probably be a $9.99 book.
Oh yeah, it'll be $99.99. It'll be one, or no, I guess $9.99 would be 1,000 pennies, right? So it'll be $999.99. I'll buy it. Julian, I heard you like our book sale figures for the month. Do you want to play this game with us?
I do. I actually geek out anytime you do sales stuff on the show because I think it comes from me working in an independent video game store for so long.
Yeah.
I just dig hearing like how books are selling and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm totally down for this.
Cool.
Julian likes shop talk.
I
do.
I'm a big fan of Shop Talk. Let's start with the February sales charts for 2016. Now, there's going to be some. We're going to talk briefly at the end of this about how much the comic sales plummeted in February of 2016. It was maybe not the best of month because you had last year at the same time you had what was it that shipped? It was one of the Loot Crate books that shipped in February. I want to say maybe it was Orphan Black.
Yeah.
That completely skewers the charts.
If it was a year ago, it was probably Secret Wars number 8.
Oh, hey! What, did you say that? I didn't even say that. You
It's
kidding
kind
me?
of funny. I can joke at that.
Let's do this guess here, and as I start to read these numbers to you, tell me if something starts to seem off. So, why don't we all go? Who wants to first guess?
I'll take the low hanging fruit.
What's the low hanging fruit?
Deadpool.
Deadpool. You were right twice over. Well, Charlie said Justice League real quick here, so let's do that. Justice League squeezes in the top 10 at number 10, 72,000 copies sold. Deadpool, number 7, which was their anniversary issue, is like the 25th anniversary issue
that
of
was like this
Deadpool.
thick.
Now it's $9.99.
That was $9.99?
Yep.
I paid $10 for that book?
Yep.
Ugh.
I believe, Toby, turn around. Is that right behind you? Oh, no, it's in the back left corner. Maybe it's $7.99. Oh, no, it's not. I got it here. Yeah, it's $9.99. Yeah, it's $9.99.
Good Lord.
That's number 6. The number 5 book for the month was Deadpool Mercs for Money, number 1.
That was the number 6 book?
Number 5 book.
Number
Deadpool
5
was 6. The Merc with Mouth was number 5 at 90,186 copies sold. Now, I believe, is that just a one-shot, or is that like a short mini?
Which one?
The Mercs for Money?
No, Mercs for Money, isn't that an ongoing?
No. There's only the one Deadpool ongoing. I'm pretty sure it's just a mini. But that... I'll be very curious what 2 sold because I heard from many stores that this book did not sell very well.
So I will say this just because I feel like saying this. Working the shop today, I was kind of surprised the amount of parents that brought in their kids to look for Deadpool comics today.
Shouldn't be surprised.
I liked Mercs for Money. I would say that it's maybe a rent, not a buy on my Bryce scale, but
Okay.
but it was solid.
Okay.
Yeah.
Batman.
What else? Batman, number 3 at 102,689 copies.
All right, let's get the easy stuff out of the way. Star Wars.
Star Wars was number 2 at 110,000 copies. That's
Darth
issue number
Vader.
16, by the way. Vader, number 16, was the number 7 spot at 81,000 copies. So you're missing number 1.
I know what number 1 is.
What's number 1?
Dark Knight 3.
Dark Knight 3, number 3 at 146,000 copies. Huge seller for DC. At $6 a book, too.
Yeah.
Huge seller. And I'll tell you what, I cut my orders for 2 and 3, and I've reordered them multiple times now. I put my orders for number 4 higher than my orders for number 1. That's how much Dark Knight 3 were selling.
Wait, so,
Absolutely insane.
How are the hardcovers doing?
Really good. They're selling like 10 to 20% of the actual book, which is crazy.
Yeah.
That's
I buy them.
is the story really good? I haven't read any of it.
I've only read the first issue. I like the first issue.
It's good so far.
I'm just kind of waiting for it to all wrap up.
Yeah.
So we got 1 was Dark Knight, 2 was Star Wars, 3 was Batman. We're missing 4. 5 was Deadpool, 6 was Deadpool, 7 was Vader. We're missing 8 and 9.
Spider-Man Deadpool?
Half of that's correct.
Deadpool?
The other half of that's correct.
Okay, so Spider-Man number
1, Brian Michael Bendis and Sarah Pacelli, is that her last name? The Miles Morales Spider-Man book at 99,951 copies. Damn, if only 49 more people ordered it, they would have broke 100,000 copies.
So we still need 8 and 9?
8 and 9. 8's another number 1 from Marvel. A lot of hype.
Julian, come on, get in on this.
Oh,
We'll see if this show will be well-timed.
Luke Cage Power Man.
Well-timed for when the Luke Cage TV show comes out in 6 months when
way.
the trade paperback comes out. Power Man and Iron Fist, number 1, at the number 8
Wow.
spot.
I'm shocked that
79,000 copies. Which, much like Vision, they are double shipping issue 2 to match orders for number 1 because people cut their orders for number 2 to the floor.
really?
Yeah, although it sold really well and reviewed really well.
Yeah,
So,
number 1 was good. I like number 1.
yeah, I'll be curious to see how this does. Just Here's for Hire and Power Man and Iron Fist books have a history of not selling great the last 20, 30 years. So
Well, hey, who doesn't love Black Mariah?
I haven't read it yet. So
Oh,
we're
spoiler
actually, in
alert.
the next couple weeks, we're going to have our Marvel number 1 catch-up with Spider-Man, Old Man Logan, a couple
Black
other
Old
titles.
Man Logan is just awesome.
And number 9 book. He appeared recently in a trailer we just watched before the podcast that Bryce and Brock hadn't seen.
Black Panther number 1.
Nope. Close. That's soon, though. That's going to be real big, too.
Oh, Ant-Man.
Character
Nope,
we
never
just
mind.
mentioned. Nope.
Amazing Spider-Man?
The Amazing Spider-Man, number 7. Yes, at 75,000 copies. That's the number 9 book. Now, if you
Glad that
notice
book's
these
still
books...
going strong.
What's that?
I'm glad that book is still going strong.
Oh, yeah. Amazing's still doing well. Now, if there's one thing you notice on this chart, most months previously that we've talked, the top 10 books were all generally at or over 100,000 copies. This month, only 3 books over 100,000 copies, which is very low. I don't know. This is just general fatigue in the industry. Some of the Marvel books not selling as much.
It's all the nerds having to do Valentine's. Get stuff for their ladies. Cuts into the
Everybody
cuts
had
into
to
the
see
spending
Deadpool
money.
15 times.
Yeah, this is true.
Exactly.
Well,
That's where all my money for the month went.
Again, keep in mind, these are books that comic book stores ordered in the month of December and adjusted their orders through the month of January. So this is reactionary to December and January sales. Less so what people. This is not what customers purchase in these months. This is what retailers purchase. And while
Which theoretically should
the majority
closely mirror.
the majority sell, right?
So what I would wonder is it like the movie industry, because it's all entertainment, where the holiday season is big because everybody's got extra money to spend, and then January, February, maybe March, there's a little lull. Is that the case historically?
Comic books sell
What?
when good comics come out.
Don't give me that scowl.
Well, I was just going to say, single issues don't really get affected by holidays. Maybe like trade sales and that kind of stuff do, but not singles.
Really? People don't buy more singles in December because, like, holidays are when events are...
Trades, they'll sell more.
Yeah.
I mean, again, if Civil War II came out in January, I believe it would sell the same as if it came out in May.
Really?
Yeah, I don't think it matters. I mean,
That's
and again,
very surprising to me. I would think that, like, May versus January, people, like, in January, people have all their Christmas money already spent.
people...
In May, it's like, okay, summertime, I've got, no school, I'm going to go buy some comic book. I don't know.
Comic book people run on a very different schedule than that.
Let's call it Wednesdays.
Right. Yeah, as long as the book's released on a Wednesday, that's all that matters.
Interesting, okay.
So there were 6.1 million comics sold in February 2016. Now, if you look at 10 years ago, it's up 10%. 5 years ago, it's up 5%. But versus 1 year ago, it's down 16%. That's because of Orphan Black #1.
Are you able to strip that out?
So all these numbers come from our good friends over at Comichron, by the way, comichron.com. Definitely should check that site out. And there was about 900,000 less copies sold versus February 2015. Orphan Black represented half of that. So you're down 400.
Because it's that good of a book, man.
Well, you're down 450,000 copies anyway, which is a good amount. But if the books you're looking at last time was Vader #1, Spider-Gwen #1, Star Wars #2, Batman 39, which was the tail end of the big Joker arc.
Yeah.
Darth Vader #2, Silk #1. So you're against huge books.
Yeah.
I think we're just going to, this will be how the first half of this year is going to turn out. They're up against insane launches from last year.
Okay, so that's fair, and so perhaps last year was an anomaly. How about 2 years ago? Are they up 2% from 2 years ago?
I just have the 10.5 and 1 year ago. I don't have the number sitting in front of me. Oh, actually, you know what? No, I take that back. Hold on. No, I think I do have it.
Like if they're up 10% from 10 years ago and up 5% from 5 years ago, how are they doing compared to 2 or 3 years ago if last year was an anomaly?
I only have 1 to 5 years. Sorry, I can do that research for next time.
You know what? I'd like to do that. Come back to me when you have something.
It doesn't sound like a doom and gloom scenario. Maybe if there was this continued for the next few months, there'd be something to really sink into there.
It is. It's going to. We're going to see this for the first couple months of this year because the Marvel books that they were launching, they had the Star Wars books, and most of these all new, all different books are lower at this point than the end of the previous series, as well as the DC books are all now being cut to the bone because Rebirth is right around the corner, where customers are going to drop these books left and right. So it's going to be a rough start to the year. However, I'm assured that, I will assure you that come May and June, it'll all flip back around
with Civil War 2 and Rebirth.
With Civil War, yeah, exactly,
yeah.
Exactly. But yeah, there's less books out now too. There's just DC released something like 20 less comics in February compared to last year. So there's a lot of kind of
20 less,
something crazy like that.
Dude, that is crazy.
Yeah, there's we're in sort of a transition period right
also,
now.
you can tell Saga and Walking Dead didn't have a book come out in February, I guess.
They must not have, yeah, or they did, but maybe they're down in the list a little bit here.
No, I think a lot of stores got shorted Saga twice.
Walking Dead, Walking Dead 151 is the number 13 book, and yeah, they
did that come out in February? And
yeah,
it lost to Luke Cage and Power Man.
Well, but we also have that's normal sales for Walking Dead.
Pardon me?
That's normal sales for Walking Dead. 150 had a huge boost because of all the variants.
Oh, okay. I thought that Walking Dead sold more.
Oh, okay. Saga 34 came out, 24th spot. Yeah, that's pretty low.
Oh, really?
But if you're looking at the Marvel #1s that came out this month along with these, you have the Avengers Standoff at the 18th spot at 57,000. I don't know if you have more in here. I don't see any more #1s. I mean, it'll be the only other one. So, again, bit of a transition, but I'm sure that'll change. One other note here from the guys at Comichron. It says the lower volumes, so that the 300th place comic sold 3,744 copies, the lowest total since 2012. So if you come back here, let me scroll down a little bit here.
Who's our Red Lantern?
Dirk Gently, the new IDW miniseries, was 3,744. If you go to January, it's 4,028 copies for the Avengers Universe Avengers. December 15th, massive ninth wave #1 was 5,848. So you're looking at over 2,000 unit sale at the bottom of the 300 chart over a 2-month period. So yeah, we're going to see an interesting year. You're going to see a lot of changes this year.
So
as customers and retailers react to.
So it must have been when Star Wars came in that had to send massive ripples across the buying charts.
Oh yeah,
and now that like the waters have subsided, while I'm on this crazy metaphor, maybe it'll sort of right itself.
Well, I think you always have peaks and valleys, and you've had 5 straight years of growth in the comic industry. This will probably be that adjustment year, unless Rebirth just destroys everything. And with the double shipping books, it's possible that a lot of those titles could ship very strong through the year. Civil War is going to do big. Civil War needs to bump the tie-ins, though, and that's where the AVX, all these other previous titles, Civil War, especially back a decade ago, those crossovers bumped the tie-ins by huge numbers.
Well, Civil War did, yeah,
right. Civil War 2, but this goes for DC too. I'm not getting people that say, "Oh, I want all the crossovers." 1 or 2. It used to be 10 to 20. So I think, like I've said previously, we're down to the point now where people are really interested in kind of their 1 or 2 titles. I hope the crossovers bump things up quite a bit, but Mockingbird, as Mockingbird stands, someone who's really interested in Civil War 2 won't care about the Mockingbird crossover book because Mockingbird is still being targeted at an audience that wants to read the one Mockingbird comic a month. And I think that's why I think DC's changing with Rebirth, and we're going to see by the end of the year a lot of these B and C list or C and D list Marvel titles be replaced by much more traditional versions. I've used that pendulum example a few times where I think that pendulum's kind of swung way too far to one side of more experimental titles. I think we're going to see it kind of swing back a little too far with DC. I want a little more experimentation, but they kind of need to right themselves. Marvel's going to have a similar thing. And that kind of that 10 to 15% sweet spot of experimental titles, I think we're going to see. With Marvel, you're going to see a lot of these, again, alternative for Marvel titles go away. Charlie? Oh. Thought you were giving me the...
No.
I have something to say.
Yeah, I think you caught him off guard. Like, what?
No, he just has a crush on you.
Well, again, Starbrand and Night Mask. Oh man, and don't piss off the Starbrand and Night Mask fans.
What happened?
If they're I don't know. If someone freaked out on me on Twitter about this, I'm assuming they listen to the podcast. But otherwise, I don't. Maybe I had to just block them because I'm like, you're crazy. Maybe it was really Charlie because Charlie loves Greg Weisman so much that he's like, "You Ryan, I'm gonna get that guy."
See,
he's
that's why
bad.
I haven't been on like Instant Messenger. I've been too busy just trolling you.
What are you, Bryce?
Maybe. He's not as big a cable fan.
But
Yes, Bryce is not as big a cable fan.
Speaking of Civil War, the Bryce and Charlie Civil War that was just about to happen here over cable.
Yeah. Okay. Wow.
Julian, let's turn to you. How are you on trailers? Are you I have to watch every trailer type of guy, or are you more like me and Bryce and I think?
Well, no, Bryce is anti-trailer. You're one main trailer, unless it's something that you give yourself leeway for.
No, Ryan is like, I'll watch a trailer and a teaser, and if it's a movie that I like, I'll watch it. I have the right.
I have the right to reserve to change my mind whenever I want. But I am done with Batman Superman. I mean, for us, it's 8 days from now. For me and Toby, and sorry, Charlie.
You could quit your job and come.
What could go wrong?
Yeah.
Yeah, so for me with the
just
trailers...
let my job send me to Vegas and then watch it when I get back.
But yeah, Julian, what's your take on trailers?
Well, for me with the trailers, it depends on the movie. I was right there with you with Star Wars. I went in there with as little information as I could possibly have. I saw the teaser, I saw a trailer, and then I avoided pretty much everything else. I've gotten to the point with the comic book movies where it doesn't really bother me too much if I see a lot of stuff because, it's still experience. Yeah, I mean, I'm going to watch these movies 4 and 5 times, probably 3 in the theater and then another 4, 3 or 4 times on Blu-ray, and then some. So it doesn't bother me too much. I will say that and I mentioned this before we started recording, but the second Civil War trailer and I think the second Batman v Superman trailer should have been the first trailer, because it did a much better job of explaining what the movie is, and I think it's just cut better.
I agree.
To be perfectly honest.
I agree. Yeah, I was a little down on that first Civil War trailer. I thought the money shot at the end with Tony Stark, Iron Man, with Iron Man, War Machine, and Cap was a little too cartoony, a little too shitty CG, video gamey looking.
Iron Man, War Machine, and Cap?
You meant Winter Soldier.
Okay, just checking.
Or, no, the very end. The big... You're
talking about the Cap Winter Soldier fighting Iron Man.
Oh, sorry,
down.
You're right, sorry. Cap Winter Soldier and Iron Man. I'm sorry, you're correct. I felt that was like way too CG'd. It looked real bad. I thought them running around a big empty, field of
you said
plain field.
Like
it was real crappy.
Yeah.
That said, this new Civil War trailer so much better than the first one. I think it, plot wise, I thought it kind of gave a little bit more explanation of what was actually going on why there's this battle between these guys. I feel the team, you're given a little better explanation. Maybe not an explanation, but you see the line split between the teams a little bit better. I thought the money shots as they were much stronger in this one. They have the Ant-Man Hawkeye shot,
that was awesome.
That's my money shot. So we obviously get the Spider-Man shot at the very end of the trailer, but the Hawkeye Ant-Man, that was my money shot.
How about that send up to, or that callback rather to Captain America 1? I love that.
Yeah.
Which one?
The one he's holding his hands up. He's, I could do this all day.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. He does that in the first. He does that in both of them.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah.
I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Oh, good call.
Yeah, he's the sickly Steve in the alleyway going, I can do this all day.
Yeah.
And you're like, dang.
Oh, that is awesome. I didn't realize. Okay, cool.
So that was the moment in the trailer for me.
No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
What was that, John?
Oh, that was the moment of the trailer for me. I mean,
nice.
The rest of the stuff was nice and flashy, but I really dug that nice little subtle callback.
Yeah. So let's go around the table. What'd you guys think? Brock, let's start with you, because you and Bryce literally watched it 2 minutes before we started recording.
I thought it was great. The first Julian's correct. This should have been the first trailer we saw. It was cut together very well. It had good pacing. It gave you enough of a story for you to kind of be like, okay, I know what this is going to be about. It had a lot of flash and stuff that you could basically go, ooh, cool, and enough that the money shots or the good things in the trailer, there was enough that it's going to be different for different people, right? There's something for somebody to attach themselves to, and I think that this trailer was by far better than the first one. So.
Well, I didn't see the first one. I didn't know if this was the second, third, fourth, seventh, first.
This is your first.
It's 12.
But it was definitely my first time. And for my first time, it was so good. Yeah, dude, I was... so I wasn't going to do it, but then there's like, all right, we're going to actually talk about it on the podcast. So, you can step out or you can just watch it. And so I caved.
So peer pressure won out?
Peer pressure definitely went out. I've been a victim of peer pressure my whole life. But it's always ended up in
different group.
Yes. Yep. And it's always ended up very awesomely. Great trailer. Just loved it so much. I got spoiled, but I was going to try to avoid it the whole time until the movie came out. Good luck with that, Bryce. But people were changing their profile pictures on Facebook to the Spider-Man money shot, and so I'm like, what is this? And something like I went on to YouTube to watch something completely different over the weekend, and one of the cover photos was the Spider-Man money shot of why? Am I supposed to avoid YouTube and Facebook even if I'm not looking for
You're supposed to avoid the entire internet.
So
Star Wars, I mean, I literally did not go on the internet for 2 days or two, 3 full days before Star Wars.
Such a long time, Ryan.
For him, it is.
For anyone, I mean, in the industries that we are in the ways that we interact, that is because the first thing you do when you wake up is one of the last things you do when you go to sleep.
I did such a good job of voting trailers. I think that I told you this for Star Wars that I actually didn't know that Luke Skywalker was in the movie. So that
he wasn't in
cool.
any trailers. Barely. You never saw his face.
Wasn't he in the cast?
Yeah, originally.
So you knew he was going to be in it.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
That's more fun that way, though.
Oh, it was
It's way
incredible.
more fun. Yeah,
it was
fun
awesome.
that way.
It was awesome.
Yeah.
Anyway, so this trailer was really, really just so great. I love it. I love it when they tie everything together. Like when they're when William Hurt. It's William Hurt, right? The old man with the mustache, telling them how bad they are. I think it's William Hurt. Yes, no, crickets.
Thunderbolt Ross, yeah.
Thank you very much, Julian. Somebody knows what I'm talking about. So, when he's like showing them footage from Avengers 1 and Avengers 2 and Cap 2,
I thought there was Man of Steel footage at first, but I guess it was from Avengers. So.
Because there's so much death,
yeah.
You might have been right. I loved it. I just don't see this is sort of separate from the trailer a little bit. I don't see how Iron Man's team loses. Iron Man is like I loved, and I mean this is sort of the magic of comic book movies, is that like Cap is like fist punching Iron Man's helmeted face. And I guess holding his own. I'm not really sure how that's possible, but it's just because Cap is such a badass, I guess. And looking at the teams online, I just don't see like whichever team, in my opinion, has vision should just win. But there's that awesome scene in the trailer, because I was like, he's got a Infinity Gem. Who's beating this guy? Whoever's team he's on just wins.
Scarlet Witch.
But then that scene, because I was thinking that, and then this trailer like shows Scarlet Witch just PWNing Vision, and I was like, oh, maybe that's how they get around it. Like, that's awesome.
On the same team.
And like the Ant-Man flying around and Hawkeye, and oh my god, Black Panther looks so cool. And how about Iron Man's Underoos call for Spider-Man? So good.
With Black Panther, I want to look at early footage of that first trailer and this one. It looks like they cleaned him up or they did something.
I think there's a lot of money shots.
Oh, was he in the first
trailer? Because they were finished and they didn't make it in the first one.
Okay, because it looked a little rough, I thought, in the first trailer, but he looked a lot cleaner in this one. I like the look.
See, this is why you wait or don't watch them. It was an awesome trailer. I was already at 10 out of 10 for excitement. Now I'm just 10 out of 10, or I'm 11 out of 10 now.
Now you should probably take off your pants. You're so excited.
Yes, I can do that if you'd like, Brock. Fine.
No, I don't. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
It's catching on.
Yeah, slowly but surely. One podcast at a time.
Now, Toby.
Yes.
Oh, good old Toby.
Yes.
You texted me in the morning and you were like, I didn't like that trailer.
No.
What's up? What's wrong with you?
Yeah, I'm like always the weird one out. Like I feel weird now. I'm gonna get attacked on the internet. Yeah. No, I didn't feel. I'm one of the few actually really dug the first one.
Hold on, let me ask you a question before you start.
Yeah.
Do you not like the way they put the trailer together as a sort of movie aficionado? Or
I don't know. I didn't like the pacing, to be honest with you.
Why don't you let him talk? That's
No, because I think there's two questions here. I didn't like the trailer, like kind of that Ghostbusters trailer. I felt like they didn't put their best foot forward. The material wasn't funny. Do you not like the material in the trailer, or do you not like the way the trailer is put together? To me, that's the question. Which one did you not like, or did you not like either?
I don't think I like the way it was put together, even though you're right. Upon of watching a couple of more times, it does tell the story better.
Yeah.
Now, the first trailer, I really liked it because I kind of like the moodier, darker, kind of slower stuff. That's just what I like in comic books in general. But I did find myself explaining it to like what I call normal people a lot of times what the movie is about, because I had a lot of friends come up and go, I'm really not looking forward to this movie. I'm like, are you crazy? This is like my most excited movie. And I felt like I had to explain to a lot of them what the plot was going to be, and none of them got it. So I'm like, watching this trailer multiple times now, I'm like, you know what? It does do a better job of explaining things. So in that sense, probably yes, it should have been the first trailer, and it does make more sense. There's just something about it I just didn't. It just felt like they. I mean, that's what a trailer's supposed to do, right? They set up the thing, money shot, and then Spider-Man. All right, we made everybody happy. Close the doors, right?
I mean, that's what trailers. I mean, to me,
there's got to be an art form to trailers. I feel like, and I feel like that wasn't in this one.
I'm always of the belief that so many trailers give away too much.
No, I don't. I hate that. In fact, I absolutely hate that. Yeah,
I feel like this gave away this gives you the plot setup, and then the fights, but no even hint at resolution. And to me, when trailers do that, and you're like, oh well, this is clearly from the end of the movie, right? I feel like that big fight scene is going to be obviously towards the end-ish, but I don't think it's really giving you a direct, here's a shot from the end.
Yeah. I think part of it was also I didn't like Spider-Man's eye movement.
Okay. I was going to ask about that.
Yeah, and actually, I've since looked a lot more things up on it.
Hold on to Spider-Man, because that's my question for after the initial discussion.
Okay.
Charlie, you want to go? What's your thoughts?
I am extremely excited for this movie, though. Sorry. I just want to put that, even though I didn't necessarily was on board 100% with this new trailer, I am, this is by far I'm most excited about of the Marvel movies. Sorry, Charlie, go ahead.
No, that's all good. So I guess I want to preface this with my problem with the first trailer was that it felt like it was too much about Winter Soldier. Like, it just kind of felt like the way they were setting it up is like Iron Man and his team were hunting, like...
Yeah, it's almost like he was the speedball of this new Civil War movie.
I mean, that's probably how they're
Yeah, but for the mass media, though, it'll make more sense like how they set up on this one. You go, hey, look at what happened in New York. Look at what happened in Washington. Look at,
Exactly.
So it makes more sense.
It didn't feel... Like, my problem with the first one is it didn't feel like it was a grand enough scope to explain why everybody had to pick a side, and this one does a much better job of explaining that and working with it. And it's an interesting sort of thing just because I'm very excited for this movie, but I have to keep reminding myself it's not the Civil War comic book.
No. Well, much like Age of Ultron, you kind of take... the characters and some loose maybe plot devices from it, but it's going to be completely different.
I'm also a huge fan of Winter Soldier, which is probably why I love the first trailer quite a bit.
Yeah.
Again,
he's great.
I'm fully on board, and I didn't hate the trailer. I just didn't feel it completely. I wasn't like this trailer is horrible. I just I'm on it. Yeah.
People were losing their minds over it, so if you're not feeling it as much, I get that.
Yeah.
The internet exploded a little bit.
Let's go back around the table. Let's start with Julian. Spider-Man's eyes. Now, this is, of course, the nerdiest of nerdy conversations, but we only have the best here on the Comic Conspiracy Podcast. You have many types of eyes of Spider-Man. You have the old Ditko, Ramita, kind of small, thicker kind of border on the eyes. You have the McFarlane eyes that take up 98% of the mask. You have variations in between. I felt... most of the eyes in the Spider-Man movies that they've done have been non-adjusting, less, more style than function. I don't know how I feel about the moving eyes as well as the thicker border and the smaller. Julian, what's your take? Do you care? I guess is the question. First, do you care? And then second, what's your preference?
I do, and I'm glad we're talking about this because it is the nerdiest thing that we could possibly talk about this trailer, but I feel it's important. As far as the actual character, I've always preferred the bigger eyes because when I was reading Spider-Man, it was like Mark Bagley and McFarlane. So I have a thing for like the really large eyes. But I've always, it's weird because I've always been against his eyes changing shape in the comics. Okay. I really hated Eric Larson when he would do that.
Yeah.
It really bugged me. But I kind of like it in the movie, and the reason is that if you're paying attention, you hear this like subtle little like electronic whir when it happens, and I was like, oh, really? Like Tony Stark must have like designed his mask for him, and it lets him emote a little bit. Well, and coming off of Deadpool, where it was like, okay, well Deadpool's doing the same thing, and there's no explanation for it there. I can kind of like Marvel No Prize explain this, where it's like, oh yeah, okay, it makes sense. There's tech in his mask. And I kind of dug it. I don't know. And I love the line. Like, that's like the perfect line because we've been waiting so long to see what this version of Spider-Man looks like. And that was perfect. Just like, hey, everyone.
Yeah. He sounds very young. But it's smart casting.
I think they wanted him young in this.
Well, smart casting because you can now have him in these movies for 10, 15 years if they want, and they don't have to get a new actor.
Okay, I assume you guys know who the actor is.
I can't remember his name.
He's a young
Tom
guy,
Holland.
I assume. Who?
Tom Holland.
Do I know him from anything or no?
Yes, but I can't call it off.
Because it's not Orphan Black, you don't know.
Yeah, it's not Orphan Black. She just won an award in Canada.
Dude, she deserves so many more than she's gotten. Anyway.
So did the other guy got the award, too.
So, Brock.
They both won.
Yes.
Eyes. Spider-Man's eyes.
Spider-Man's eyes.
Do you care?
Well,
Do you got a preference?
Okay, so being in Disneyland, I got glimpses of this when I was on posting the billion selfies that I knew was irritating you, so that's partially why I did it.
Such love.
Yeah, no. But there, I think somebody did a side-by-side comparison with the Alex Ross Spider-Man.
Ross does the small eyes too, right?
He does the small whites and then the large border, which, I mean, I think honestly, I don't care. As long as the suit looks like Spider-Man and his eyes aren't some weird shape, and they look like something from some source material, it's fine.
Interrupt really quick. Speaking of the suit, you guys all caught the mechanical web shooters, right?
On his wrist, the black
Yeah.
I
did not catch that.
So
Yeah.
real high def visual slow mo pictures. You can see it. So,
Yeah.
Bryce, you're a '90s baby. I know you like the big eyes. I'm not even going to ask. You like the big eyes.
Yeah, I mean, Toby just showed me the picture to remind me from the trailer, and it just looks like Alex Ross so bad. Yeah, I am a '90s baby, and goddamn. First of all, let me just say that I'm not sure that words on this podcast can describe how little I give a fuck. But I will say yes, just like Julian, I grew up loving the McFarlane eyes, the Mark Bagley eyes. I like that they allow him to emote. I think this is a fucking comic book movie. I liked that he did it in Deadpool, and I kind of wonder if they had the intention for them to emote the eyes before Deadpool was so successful.
Probably.
Okay, you think so?
Yeah. I have a feeling they were going to do that either way.
Okay. It just seems weird that I don't think that they've done emoting mask eyes ever, and then they do it with Deadpool, and then it's wildly successful, and then they do it with Spider-Man in the trailer that comes out the next week. It doesn't matter. I don't know. But yeah, they're not 90s eyes, but what could go wrong with not being like the 90s? You can only be successful.
Sounds like a bad
Julian,
song.
I think you were going to say something.
I was just going to say that the two movies are too close together in release for them to have already planned ahead of time to do it.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering, because they would have had to get their graphics engineers on the ball right after release day of Deadpool to do it. I just didn't know, because it seems like a very similar thing that seems very random.
Well, it feels like too that could have been if there's going to be a point of contention in creative, especially with how they're going to market this character going forward. That eye thing is a very prominent feature in the character, and especially if it's more emotive.
They featured it really prominently in the trailer.
Right. Yeah. So I have to wonder if they're like, well, we figured it out. We're going to do it. We have to show it in the trailer, because if we kind of hide this fact and people go to the movie and they're not used to it, it could be a little weird.
Huh.
So I feel like
call.
that probably was no, we have to feature this in the trailer.
Well, I mean,
it's a very good call.
If you look at Deadpool, right? I mean, Deadpool has the big, huge black, ovals on his, but those vary and change in size comic to comic depending on the artist that's drawing him.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's there, but it could be ginormously big like Liefeld's ones, or current, it's a little smaller. But nobody really said anything to the Deadpool movie about the size of the, how big
it's not as dramatic.
Yeah.
That's the difference. Because if you go back to the Romita and you go back to the Ditko Spider-Man eyes, I mean, McFarlane is like the far end extreme against theirs, where it's huge and takes up such a big part of his mask. Toby, what's your opinion?
So I think a big issue that I had with the trailer, I think, was because the eyes. I think that's the whole...
Really?
No, I really do think the whole eye thing, really messy up in the entire trailer. It's like I saw the whole trailer and I'm like, what the fuck? And then that's when I text you very angrily, going, what's up with that? So let me explain a little bit, and this is going to get as very nerdy as it's going to get. To me, Deadpool, even though it's in comic book form and you kind of see his eye squints and stuff, to me it's the eyeball itself. So I always kind of figured if they were going to do a movie that they were going to do that some way, somehow, because I feel like through a mask you could actually see that. Now with Spider-Man, I always imagined, even though in the comics they would kind of make it so there's emotions in the eyes, but when you translate that into the real world, I always imagine it just to be one size, which the first two versions of the movie versions were like that. And then when they had the emotions in the eye show up in the trailer, I'm like, that kind of takes me out of the belief, even though it's a superhero movie, it kind of took me out of the belief of that he could emote himself through. No, let me finish.
Okay.
Let me finish. Let me finish.
I have just an addition to it.
Go away. I'm going to stab you.
Toby, I'm going to let you finish. I'm in Ryan Higgins.
No, anyways, that kind of took me out of the illusion of the superhero movie. But a couple of days later, someone posted really, really, really high-res versions of the eyes, and it looks like there's different levels of it. So it's like there's little metal parts on it. If there's a reason for that, like if there's a movie and he squints for some reason he can look better and there's Tony Stark-like tech in there, that to me, at that point makes sense, right? I just don't think like as a character, as a kid that, makes a mask, the size of the eyes really don't matter to me. To me, Spider-Man looks like Spider-Man in the movie, so I'm cool with that. I just figure, like, if he squints, the black is not going to get that black all the way down, right? But if there's a feature that explains why that's doing it, I'm fine with it, actually. I just didn't want to have a cartoony element like what's it, Dr. Mask, Mr. Mask, whatever the Mask Man was.
The Mask?
The Mask. It's like, it's
Mask.
Well, it's so cartoony.
Jim Carrey's greatest performance.
Dude, that was great.
Mask is amazing. So, Toby, here's a question for you.
Yes.
What is one of the biggest complaints about the Batman movies, the early ones, and then the first 3 Spider-Man movies? The one complaint that I felt...
It was Power Rangers?
All 7 of those movies had...
Wait, I really don't know what the complaint was on the Batman movies.
No, the Batman and the first 3 Spider-Man movies, they all had the same complaint.
I really don't know what it is.
They take their masks off all the time. Because the actors are underneath the mask. They can't have emotive looks and you can't see the character's eyes very much.
Spider-Man,
the faces.
I think we talked about this in Spider-Man with the Goblin, both Spider-Man and Goblin being behind masks. It looked like Power Rangers bobbing their heads against each other.
Right, so that's why they were always taking their masks off. Mm-hmm. To me, I have to believe the intent here is we want to keep his mask on more often. Because again, in Deadpool, his mask was on nearly every scene, right, where he was in full costume. They rarely took his mask off.
Yeah, but again, in Deadpool, to me, it makes sense, though.
But right. But what I'm saying is this allows Spider-Man to be in a mask through the vast majority of scenes where no one is going to know his identity. He of all these characters, I assume, actually has a secret identity. And so if he had a secret identity, but he was just this unadjusting mask, every shot with him would be like no movement. It wouldn't work. So having the eyes emote, to me, allows them to have his mask stay on basically permanently, which within the course of this movie I think is going to be a good choice.
Okay, has Charlie gone yet? If I were listening to this podcast, I would be so angry.
If you've listened to
so much time talking about eyes.
If you've listened to 242 episodes or 252 episodes of this, this is what we talk about. So
I guess, but I think half an hour is enough time to talk about it.
The way to do it in the Civil War movie is to have Spider-Man talk to other people without masks. That's how you offset the eye thing. Yeah. Right? It's the problem with the first Spider-Man movie was because they're both with the Power Ranger bobbing thing. That's why it didn't work for me.
Well, in this movie, he should never take his mask off.
It's fine to me.
Yeah.
Charlie. If they explain it, it's cool.
Do you care? Yes or no?
I do want to hear Charlie, but I have a question about...
Didn't you just say you
don't talk?
No, this isn't about eyes, though. I actually have a question about the licensing of Spider-Man. So, is this guy going to be in more Marvel movies? How's that relationship...
Potentially. Yeah. He's on loan.
And is it the same actor that's going to be in the Sony Spider-Man?
Yes. But now, Sony is doing the Spider-Man
So it's like a soft shared universe.
Yes, Sony is doing the new Spider-Man movies. Marvel and Disney have their say, but Sony has final say as far as we know, and is 100% behind the director, the everything.
Yeah.
Okay, so it'll be like the same actor, it'll be the same costume.
So what I assume is you're going to have some shitty Sony Spider-Man movies, and he's going to be really good whenever he shows up in a Marvel movie.
The actor's really into it, by the way.
I was just curious if that's how we'll see it. I'm sorry.
The actor's been posting a bunch of Instagram videos of him doing like practicing stunts and stuff like that. It's kind of cool, actually.
Charlie, take us home, baby.
So overall, I love the new look of Spider-Man. I mean, I did notice the eyes, but they didn't bother me at all. It just... Yeah. It's one of those things where...
Have you seen the internet, Bryce?
You love Alex
I know,
Ross.
but it's been half an hour of talking about eyes. It's fucking... Come on.
To me,
we
the
suffered
eyes
through a
were
half
kind
an hour
of
of
one
your
of the
Marvel
least
stuff.
important things about that trailer.
Okay. Short and sweet.
Yeah.
Charlie's awesome.
So an hour into this podcast, let's actually start this thing. Julian, you have a fantastic topic that you want us to discuss, and you definitely I had to make sure everyone was here for this. We want to talk some normal comic stuff here. Why don't you introduce us to what you want us to talk about?
Oh, awesome! Yeah, thank you. And I'm glad that you are on board with the topic. I really felt that it would be pretty popular with the whole conspiracy crew, but
some of us just found out about it, so we're a little irritated that we didn't get time to.
So much to go in the
prepare.
Facebook group.
Well, Toby knew, and I was hoping Toby would be here for this one. But no, I wanted to talk tonight about teenage superheroes. It's something that's always been near and dear to my heart. And I've been trying really hard to think of why. I can't really come up with a really great explanation.
Because everyone wants to go back to high school.
Yeah, that's probably part of it. I mean, I was really hardcore into my Dawson's Creek years.
Whoa.
You know,
that might be something he tells you to
No,
edit
you know
out
what?
later.
I'll defend you. I'm with you right there, dude.
Yeah, thank you. You know, and I was like a Buffy
I'm
fan.
with you all the way, dude.
And the thing is, like, I had fun in high school, you know, even with all of the crappy, angsty bullshit that happens and everything. But I never want to forget those years. I never want to forget what it's like to be a teenager. And there's something about the idea of teenage superheroes having to deal with not knowing who they are as a person. You know, their bodies are changing. They're having their first experience with love and all of this stuff. But then on top of that, they've got powers to deal with. They've got a secret life they have to handle. You know, this dual personality. And I just find that very engaging and very interesting. And throughout the years, like, a lot of the books that I've gravitated towards have been with, like, teenage protagonists. So I just kind of wanted to, like, get everybody's thoughts on teenage superheroes and some of your favorites, and if you're still reading any books with teenage characters right now.
Yeah. Well, let's kind of throw a few titles out there, and I won't necessarily start with my favorites.
Yeah, you are. Just start it.
Well, if you go back to the early days, you obviously have characters like Bucky and Toro, and you have kind of those teenage sidekicks, right? Robin, obviously. But let's get to the real nitty gritty here when this starts. Legion of Superheroes.
Yep.
Late 50s, when they introduced the Legion of Superheroes as part of Superman and Superboy and Supergirl's kind of backstory. Those were, I mean, there probably was more groups of teen heroes prior to that, but that's really the first one that I think made a big splash. And for kids reading in the 30s, 40s, 50s, you know, the belief was, let's bring in a teenage hero to kind of act as like their eyes into the books, right? When you start with the Legion and you go forward from there, I feel the comic audience started to grow. You have teenagers, but then you start to have more adults reading. So by the time you get into the 60s, a character like Peter Parker can reach not only the teenagers and the kids that are reading, or let's say kids, but also the young adults, the 20-something, the college kids, and older. And a character like Peter Parker, I think everyone of every age can relate to in some fashion, whether it's them remembering their youth or their current time if they're a younger character, which is why, you know, Marvel, especially in the recent last 5 years or so, has tried to push real hard back into these teenage heroes. But you know, they seem to be successful to a crowd, but they haven't hit that widespread success that you had with Legion of Superheroes, with Peter Parker,
X-Men.
With X-Men. I mean, X-Men were very young when they started, but the X-Men, when they became more popular, they were much older. I mean, when you hit the 70s,
they had aged.
They were not teenagers anymore. Obviously, and then the biggest one, it's even the name, New Teen Titans in the 80s. That was, again, a very one of the most successful books of the 80s, and it was all about these teenage characters that I think reached every age group. So, for the older books, who was a fan of the teenage heroes as a kid, but then, obviously to today? Bryce, I know you're...
Yeah, so for me, I never really thought of... I mean, it's always on your... Not always on your mind, but it's always sort of a very obvious thing that I don't ever think about by itself. Teenage heroes got me into comics when I was a teenager. Like, obviously, Superman got me into comics, Batman, the X-Men, no matter how old they were. But I didn't get into Young Justice, but I can definitely see the appeal, because not as loudly as you, but I love New Warriors. I love Darkhawk. Like, the whole idea when you're a teenager of like, yeah, I could do this. Not like fight crime, but like, how cool would this be if I could do this? Like,
right.
That whole thing was just so good at like drawing you in, and it's a great storytelling mechanic by any writing company to try to draw these young readers into their world, because they're just going to relate more to these teenage superheroes, which I think segues very well with, Civil War #1, where they sort of show the consequence of teenager actions. So when you become an older reader, you're able to say, it's because of these teenage superheroes that don't understand what they're doing. It allows for great, I guess, play across the generations. The mature, serious guys, for those types of readers, and then the young, immature, like, this is so awesome that I get to do this, teenage heroes. I never really thought about teenage heroes as a sort of, is motif the right word? But I certainly get it, which is funny because now that I'm older, I look at these titles like Miss Marvel and I'm looking at and Nova, and I'm sure that there's young Bryce out there somewhere that isn't my son, which is a weird way of saying that. That's loving these titles and like, yeah, this would be so cool. Like, I'm a teenager, like, I could do this, or wouldn't this be cool if I could do this? And I'm just like, oh god.
Well, that's what I was saying earlier. So when we were kids in the 80s and 90s, I feel like characters like the New Mutants, like New Teen Titans, like New Warriors, spoke to us because we were teenagers. But the adult heroes we also appreciated.
Yeah.
So whereas today, the average kid coming in that looks at Nova, that looks at Miss Marvel, that looks at like maybe like Teen Titans Go or Young Justice, and they're like, those are my characters. But because we've been doing this for 20 years, we look at it and we're like, well, I mean, maybe the comic's fine, but that's not Miss Marvel, right? Have we fallen into the trap of all old people, of like those kids? We don't. But that's the smart thing, is that Marvel and DC have always had this option for the multiple audiences, right? But I think you've had instances where Teen Titans and Legion, especially in the 80s, and X-Men, if you want to count them as definitely younger heroes, reached every audience. And I don't get that a lot right now. Maybe Miss Marvel to a degree, but I don't see a lot of these teen books hitting ages of every audience as much as maybe in the past.
Yeah, I totally. So yes, I agree with that. I think that it's very interesting. I would love to sort of have more time to think about, like, was there a mid-30s-year-old when I was reading Darkhawk and New Warriors and loving it? Was there like this mid-30s guy that's just like, oh god, this story is so immature?
Oh, I'm sure.
It was the guy behind the counter selling his book.
Yeah, but,
but that's part of the weird thing about where we're at today. I don't think it's necessarily a resisting the teenage heroes. It's resisting the new teenage heroes. And I think there's a certain amount of resisting new heroes and stuff in general as sort of a long-time audience, or any kind of rebranding of certain heroes that we tend to resist. Because, you put out another Teenage Peter Parker book, and I will sit down and read the new Teenage Peter Parker book, or anything with, like, Tim Drake and like all the already well-established heroes that have been around.
But you were accepting of Miles, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Miles is fine.
Well, Miles. Sorry, go ahead.
But I don't prefer Miles. Like, I don't associate Miles with, he's a Spider-Man, but he's not the Spider-Man.
But no, fair enough.
Julian, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, like, I think it depends on the flavor of the character, because I'm reading both Ms. Marvel and Miles Morales Spider-Man right now. Mm-hmm. I love Miles Morales. I think since the beginning, I think his book has been great. I have the full run of his first series. Ms. Marvel is on the chopping block for me. It's a good book, but as you guys have said, like, multiple times, it's just not for me. It's just a little too twee, and it's like, I'm hip. I'm with it, but I'm not with this. Like, I just can't. I can't do it anymore.
Well, in the past, I felt like all the books were for everyone, right? every Marvel and DC book, in theory, they were all ages titles. Now you have so many books that are split. These are aimed at one specific crowd. These are aimed at another specific crowd. This book is maybe a little general, all ages.
A more diverse world at this point, though.
Sure,
a lot of things are more arcane that not necessarily were back then. So you have a bigger audience at this point.
Yeah, that's true. Well, and I mean, this is what I've mentioned many times in this podcast, even earlier in this episode, is that there is kind of this weird splitting of the audience, and it's tough to find that one book that works for everyone. You just don't have it anymore. Every book is tailor-made for its specific audience.
Well, and to kind of go back to Death of the Family, there's numerous times I've sort of like sat down with some of my friends and we're just like, holy crap, our parents let us read this, because reading it now, it is kind of interesting, the fact that like the idea of like the death of Superman or the death of Robin is something that parents were very okay with, like, well, it's a comic book, even though it's about a Robin getting beaten to death, because it's a comic book, I can give it to you.
Maybe the parents are thinking that if it's the death of this character, then they won't have to take their kids to the comic book store anymore, because there's going to be no more stories about them.
Yeah. But
for fun, just go back and look at the panel where Tony Stark gets shot by Kathy Dare, and then just think about reading that when you're like 9.
Yeah, and I mean, that's sort of the thing, is I know, at least even from my perspective as a parent, like, I don't think I would rush out and like hand my kids Death of the Family, versus when I was their age, that's probably the exact same kind of thing I would have picked up.
Well, I think what it is I mean, I get this a lot, and Ryan, you experience it too, is that there's kind of a gap in like age where you can introduce things to kids, right? Like, it goes from the all ages wall to like PG-13.
Yeah.
You know, and there's like this kind of gap in the middle where kids are they feel like they're older than the all ages books, but they're not old enough yet for, you know, the books that are on the wall, because those are more of marketed at PG-13 kind of rating. So yeah, like Brian said, I think it harkens also back to, you know, DC and Marvel are trying to release books that, you know, are aimed at a little more teenager audience. But again, I don't think it's working for everybody right now.
Right, and that's what I was saying earlier. I feel it's Brock. Let's move on from talking around teenage heroes to talking to teenage heroes. I've never known you to be like, because I think me, Bryce, and Toby more specifically have kind of always focused on a lot of these characters. I know you've got your favorites, but I've never really been a big teenage character fan. Like, the closest I think I would come to is to say maybe when I've read Spider-Man. Mm-hmm.
But even then,
well, Spider-Man hasn't been a teenager in like any of our comic reading, and barely in our lifetimes.
Yeah.
So.
But it's like you'll go back and you'll
actually hell. At 79, I mean, we're all 79 at the earliest. By that point, Peter Parker was already out of college and working at the Daily Bugle full time. So yeah.
So,
but there was the Ultimate version.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up.
Sure. But traditional Peter Parker.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. Like I read the Ultimate Spider-Man stuff, and you know, it's one of those things where I think, yes, like Ultimate Spider-Man really worked. I enjoyed the character. I liked seeing the progression of Peter Parker from, you know, him having to deal with these powers and going to school and juggling his life and stuff like that. And it, you know, Julian kind of hit it on the nail on the head earlier when he said that, you know, teenage characters, you gravitate towards them because you know, there's this kind of feeling that you get in high school where it's, You have responsibilities, but they're not life-shattering responsibilities if they're not kept.
They are when you're in high school.
They are when you're in high school, you know. But it's not like it's the end of. It feels like it's the end of the world, but it's not.
But if you're a superhero, it could be the end of the world.
If you're a superhero, it could be the end of the world. So it's like, you know, teenagers are going through a transition themselves, and you know, working with teenagers, I see it all the time. Where it's like, I know everything, and blah blah blah. I'm like, you know,
so is that why it never really clicked with you? Cause
I don't know. It's just I've always gravitated. I think personally, I've always gravitated towards the 20-something, like superheroes, like those, like teenagers. To me, I don't know. it was hard sometimes to buy that Peter Parker was ditching school and traveling all the way over to save New York for something.
It was kind of hard to buy.
Yeah. Well, that's
no,
true
it just in the early days, it just always attacked his high school, so
Yes,
it
true.
made it really easy. Let's
But
head over to
I can see the importance of having solid teenage characters that people can relate to, especially for that demographic. And but again, they need to, for them to stick. A lot of times they have to hit multiple demographics.
Sure. Slid over to Charlie. Oh yeah, Julian. Yeah, you got something.
Oh, I was just going to say real quick, and I think one of the things that that helps, or it's helped for me with a lot of the teenage books, is they tend to have a lot of humor in them. Mm-hmm. That's really why I ended up sticking with Young Justice and Impulse in a big way, because those books were just so damn entertaining. And they would kind of break the fourth wall a little bit. Like, I remember a really great bit in Young Justice where it was the Ray and Impulse and I forget who else, and they were sitting around like talking about how sad they were that their books got canceled.
Yeah.
And Robin's like, "What do you mean that your books got canceled?" It's like, "Oh, well, the comic book that I like to read, it got canceled." And then they're kind of whispering about, "But you know what? Some guys never get their books canceled, and it's not fair." And then Robin's just kind of like doing his thing.
remember
And
that.
just really good stuff like that.
awesome.
I always love that.
I think in a book like Young Justice too, you had the adult heroes. You had Red Tornado. You had the Ray, who, I mean, he wasn't a kid, but he wasn't like an adult. He was kind of that
Right.
early 20-somethings. So you had various adults in the books that I think kind of make that transition work for people that aren't necessarily, maybe like Brock, that aren't like, oh, I don't want to read just about these kids. But Charlie, what's your history here?
Well, my history kind of flops all over the place because a lot of my sort of comic book interests kind of go back and forth depending on various shows and that kind of stuff. So obviously I think of stuff like Terry McGinnis from Batman Beyond and that kind of stuff. So of course when they have him in comic books, I always read
The
those
trash
comic books.
is on the back of this car again. At this point, I'm convinced that these people just put the trash on the back of the car from whatever neighboring units here and just drive it to the back because they're that lazy.
Freaks me the fuck out right now.
Yeah,
I was
me
like,
too.
what just happened?
Every time.
Yeah.
I was
every
like,
time we're recording.
I was like, what?
he
There's
was-
trash on me because you were just like looking the other way. I'm like, what's he talking about?
I did like the Mallrats sneaking in.
Oh, yeah, you like
right.
that?
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Sorry. Go ahead, Charlie.
Yeah. So I've always liked a lot of sort of teenage heroes, but typically when they're like, I like the idea of like Teen Titans and that kind of stuff. I like the idea of these teenage heroes kind of being connected to a larger mythology and kind of shouldering the weight of the mantle and stuff that goes with that. Mm-hmm. More than I like sort of the teenage heroes, other than ones that kind of built up their own mythology like Spider-Man, but I'm always resistant to like brand new characters without a mythology suddenly kind of being dumped into New York to be around all these disasters that have a lot of other heroes who could take care of it.
But what about when you get to see those heroes grow? Because that's one of the things that I've liked about the way that DC handles it, is that there's an actual sense of time where you kind of see them progress from like younger heroes to like kind of coming into their own. And
Yeah.
a different one is like my all-time, well, not my all-time, but my current favorite book that I've been reading for years is Invincible, where I've literally seen him go from like a high schooler to a guy in his mid-20s who is saving the universe on a regular basis.
Who's
but
now a father.
it's been really cool to see that progression.
Well,
but-
Invincible allows for that, less so in the I mean, DC, I feel, ages their characters slightly. Dick Grayson, obviously, is about 10 to 15 years older than he is when he started.
Which was 50 years ago.
Assuming traditional continuity. Marvel has Valeria Richard, right? Bryce is going to yell at me. Is it Valeria? And I'm mispronouncing
Yeah,
it
it's
for
not
10
fucking
years.
complicated. It's
Valeria
Valeria.
Richards ages like 3 or 4 years, and Franklin Richards is not aged a day. So, I feel Marvel hasn't aged their teen heroes quite as much.
I don't disagree with the second thing that you said, but God, how annoying!
What?
Franklin Richards used to be this like little baby, and now he's
Oh, but like his third appearance, he was like 4 or 5 years old. Like he hasn't aged very much.
yeah. And now he's like 9. That's sort of in line with
Wait, I remember him being an adult.
Well, yeah, he was like 50 years old or 60 years old at one point, but
I'm pretty sure that the whole Marvel Universe is Franklin Richards'
playground
dream. It is now. It is now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what Hope was a baby, and then boom, she's like this teenage girl.
Yeah.
Hashtag where's Hope?
Hashtag nobody cares.
Hashtag
Toby,
fuck you.
Now you are Mr. Teenage Hero.
Yeah. It's
I mean, so we all know about your Gambit stories from when you were a kid.
Oh,
well, when did it start? I mean, was it always Nightwing? Was that kind of?
As we're talking about, I was trying to figure out why I'm so attracted to the teenage. I'm gonna call it teenage/younger heroes because some of them are actually not teenagers. I think. Yeah.
So much hilarity there.
Well, I felt like the Teen Titans. They were called the Teen Titans, and they were all like
No. Toby's professed love for teenagers. Sorry.
I'm wrong. No, I when I first started reading books. Now I grew up a little differently than you guys because I grew up with Fist of the North Star as one of my first cartoons I watched, so I was pretty dull to violence as I was growing up.
Well, there's a case where especially in a lot of animation, but especially anime, a lot of the Japanese anime, kid heroes are the norm.
Yeah.
And in American comics, they tend to kind of be not. They're not. So you were probably much more accustomed to this.
A lot of people gravitated towards Wally West. There's that divide between Wally West, and he was a character that you saw age a little bit.
Well, I think that's also an age thing. People that are in their 30s, 20s, and 30s, they like Wally. People that are older like Barry because that was their Flash.
Yeah, it's true.
So, Fist of the North Star is a cartoon that was overly violent as you can get. So I was very accustomed to bloody stuff. So one of my first comics I was reading was Batman. One issue of Superman because that's all that was available. But it was in the Batman issue, it was a Hugo Strange for the first half, and the second half was Jason Todd stealing Batman's wheels, and
that would be the post-crisis Jason Todd origin.
Yeah, and that story just stayed with me for years. I mean, it's basically a kid doing what he had to do to survive, and Batman, saw it in him and took it on his wing, and that story I was like, that's pretty phenomenal. Because this kid is kind of like the kid against the world. I feel like that's more than an adult against the world who has experience under his belt. So I really like that story. And then, the death in the family just blew my mind. I was like, at that point, I realized about legacy, when the other Robin would come back and, Superman coming to pay his respects. That's when all of it kind of started turning for me. And that's when I really started digging these younger heroes. I think I came to the state once to visit my uncle, and on the airport on the way back, I bought Dark Hawk #2.
Yes.
Yeah. So, or number 2 or number 3, I forgot. I have to look at the cover, but it's
beaten by an issue.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure we bought the same issue actually. There's Dark Hawk that kind of after seeing some of these older heroes, and Spider-Man at that point to me was always an adult already.
Yeah.
So seeing these seeing some of these younger heroes, I really gravitated to them. That's how I was got into New Warriors at that point, because Spider-Man was a lot with the New Warriors, but I loved the New Warriors. I mean, to me, it was growing up, I actually moved around a lot. It would be surprising if I stayed at one place more than a year. It was just, every year it was move. So I would never really get to know people. So in a way, I never really lived a normal teenage life, so to say. And reading his books kind of made me live that teenage life through them, if that makes sense. And in ways, since I never really had that life, I kind of still live through these mediums. Maybe that sounds a little creepy at this point. But, that's why I like the shows. And I understand, I love the John Hughes movies. I just absolutely love them because it lets me have a little piece of what I never had, right? Yeah. So I always it's a part of my life that's always been missing. And that's kind of one part of why I like the younger heroes. The other one is kind of their outlook in life is a little lighter, so they have a little more fun with things. But the third part is kind of what I like the most about it is the legacy, the responsible bearing. If Kid Robin has to take over for Batman, who is out, he knows it's on his shoulders to not only live up to what Batman would have done, but the whole universe exploding is on his shoulder now. I'm like, to me, that's 10 times more interesting, and 10 times more what you can do with that is so much more than, look, Superman is going to save the end of the day. Yeah. A kid hero might try to save the day, but might fuck it up royally, right? So to me, the aspect was always a lot more interesting. I loved the New Mutants growing up. I just absolutely loved the New Mutants. New Warriors. What else is there? Titans. I love the Titans. And later I actually really got into Jeff Johns' run, especially with Superboy's story of him struggling, like half his DNA is like Luthor. Like, would he ever do something bad? Like, him struggling with that, I found always very, very interesting. I like the lighthearted stuff of the Young Justice you were reading. I absolutely love the Young Justice, the TV show, which I thought was magnificently done. Even now, say last 10 years, maybe more, because time passes a lot further. Runaways is, in my mind,
that's a great call.
I love Runaways. You got a bunch of kids that are getting older, starting to realize what's happening in the world, that they figure out their parents are supervillains, and they decide to get away. I mean, that's just brilliant storytelling to me. Like, these kids decided on their own and go, hey, what our parents are doing is not right, so let's just get away from it. I really love Runaways. And then when the new X-Men came, which is kind of the New Warriors, but it was like it's actually X-Men, but lost powers, and they had to kind of do their own thing, where Jubilee was kind of leading the team. I love that take on it. It's anything where you basically face a world with bigger responsibilities. I just think it's always bigger for a younger hero to take care of. X-23 is another one. Just her story is just amazing, right? I mean, just with it wouldn't be as strong if Wolverine wouldn't be around. The fact that there is a Wolverine, is what makes X-23 so interesting to me. So to me, it's like the legacy part needs to be in the story, which is why you hear me badmouth the New 52 so much about the Batman family, because I love the legacy part in the Robins.
Wait till June.
Yeah. And, I love the legacy in the Titans, because even the Titans, like when the Jeff Johns, that's a next generation of Titans. That's not the original Titans. I love the fact that, Dick became Nightwing, and it's the next Robin that's leading it, and he's the one that's befriending himself with Superboy. So to me, all the generational stuff is just phenomenal, and the learning part, the realizing part, figuring out the world, which is why I really dug season 2 of Young Justice in the TV show, because he basically got, young Dick Grayson graduating up to be Nightwing. He's leading not one team, but like 4 teams at the same time, giving them missions. This is like, just think of what goes through his head. It's just so amazing.
So you must have loved the Ultimate Universe.
I did. No, I actually, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I forgot. I was going to mention that Ultimate Spider-Man. I remember I was
so good.
Yeah, I was working at Legends at the time, and I think I was fairly fresh. I worked there a little bit, maybe a year or so, and then Ultimate Spider-Man came out, and I remember all the old guys. They're like, "It's so stupid. It's so stupid."
Ultimate Spider-Man?
No, the older guys. Yeah, Ultimate Spider-Man. That's before he came out. Before number 1 came out. I was remembering the story.
I was bitching about it too.
Yeah, everybody was like hating on it.
Before it came out?
Yeah.
And I just remember looking at the art going, I think I dig this. And when number 1 came out, I was even hesitant of buying it because everybody was bitching about it so much. And I'm like, fuck them all. So I bought it, and I read it, and I was like, that was like my favorite book for years to come at that point, because just the way it was written, again, the younger guy, having to go through the world, not only figuring his own stuff out, but having to bear the responsibility of being a hero, or trying to figure out what the right thing is to do, is while also making mistakes, which is brilliant to me. So I loved the Ultimate Universe when it first started. I also liked the X-Men Ultimate Universe, just because, there's just slightly different takes on things, which just made it so much more interesting. Now, fast forward 5 years later, they kind of destroyed the Ultimate Universe.
Fantastic Four started out well, although I think that was a much shorter-lived, awesome run of teenagers. But yeah, I totally agree that they had 30 years or whatever of teenager storytelling to draw upon to make this awesome story that could appeal to older and younger readers. Which made the beginning of X-Men the very beginning of Fantastic Four. But I think almost all of Ultimate Spider-Man fucking awesome, even though it's a teenager. I was never down on those, any of those.
Yeah.
No, I only started getting really... I started to hate, basically, the Ultimate Universe when they started going, we're not going to really reestablish stuff that has happened, but in a modern way, but just start doing completely new stories, killing off characters, and...
But I thought because of that, it felt so fresh, though.
Well, but my sort of thing is I really, really, really like the idea of being able to tell something like the Dark Phoenix saga for a new generation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and being able to tell that well through basically a modernized story like that. So when the Ultimate Universe started, I didn't mind the way they tweaked sort of like Green Goblin, because it's still kind of, the looks and stuff were different, but the overall sort of what the Green Goblin stood for and all that was the same.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
But they reached a point where they were like, nope, we're going to start creating all these new characters, and we're going to tweak not just the origins.
They kind of jumped the gun eventually, but early on it was just so brilliant. Shark. Okay, fine.
Well, I mean, you could be right too.
Yes.
No,
when you have
I'm pretty
Cable
sure you're
B,
right, and I'm
Future
wrong.
Wolverine, that's definitely jumping.
But that was pretty bad.
Can I just say that
bad.
the Ultimates is responsible for the greatest page ever when it's
The what?
The Ultimate Universe is responsible for the greatest panel and the greatest page of comics ever when Cyclops is pushing Professor X down the stairs. He's in the wheelchair. Do you remember that? Is it Cyclops
No, it was
that's doing
Sinister.
it? Or is this,
Yeah, Essex.
but was he posing as someone else? It's a great panel.
I know.
Either way.
Finish your punchline. I know
It's a great
the
panel
punchline.
anyway. I love that panel. Go
Do you
ahead.
want to tell the punchline?
That's it.
It's an incredible punchline, though.
What's the incredible punchline?
What you're talking about?
Yeah, it's a great panel.
Professor X's greatest enemy.
Yeah,
Stairs.
Yeah.
Fucking the best line in the whole Ultimate Universe.
Yes.
I can.
I'm pretty sure
I can realize the enemy's the stair kind of thing right now, big time.
Oh yeah, you for sure. Did you get
it's
an
very
elevator
bad.
installed in your apartment?
No, well, I have only 2 steps, but those 2 steps are bad enough.
Anyway, yeah. I correct me if I'm wrong, listeners. I think that it was Essex or Sinister.
It's possible. I don't remember.
But
Well, real quick, I want to jump in here. I don't because I don't want to copy too much of what Toby said, but on the Teenage Hero end, obviously New Warriors is a huge part of when I first started reading comics.
And interesting, like we love the exact opposite guys on there.
Yeah, I love all the white people. You have all the all the minorities.
I love Silhouette, Rage.
I do like all of them. I want to say that. I want to get that out of the way first.
You do.
So.
I could be perfectly fine with a book with all your guys dead. And replace them with other guys, and vice versa for you.
You have to have Firestar and Justice. Come on,
Firestar, like I have a
ship
soft
them.
spot for Firestar because of the Spider-Man cartoon.
Yeah. Well, so obviously New Warriors was an early book for me. Titans I got into a little bit. I mean, after the fact, so not so early. But what you were saying about the legacy and history, that is, I think, why I found the characters so intriguing, because it is what opens up the world. To not just be the main characters. It's this trickle effect, this trickle down effect that happens where other characters form because of these characters, form because of these characters, right? The idea of Miss Marvel becoming a superhero because of her love of the original Miss Marvel, to me, I'm sure if I was like 15 years old, it'd be my favorite comic. As like an old 30-something-year-old guy now, I'm like, why Miss Marvel? But at the time, right, I mean, New Warriors #1, Justice is trying to go join the Avengers, and they're like, no, get the hell out of here, kid. That type of stuff, like, and when you're a kid, I think that really speaks to you.
Well,
and so,
these are rite of passage stories.
Yeah. A lot of them are.
Is like, as a rite of passage, that's why John Hughes' movies were so kind of successful, is that they hit on those rites of passage that, get the girl, those things that happen throughout high school. You got the ridiculous, cliches and all that. But I think that, that's why, gravitating towards rite of passage stories about teenagers, especially teenagers with superpowers that have to, take on potentially this legacy of somebody else down the road.
Yeah.
I think that there's a lot at stake in these books.
Well, I think I jumped on the Legion of Superheroes so much because it's a bit of a flip of the traditional superhero story, because the legacy they're living up to is Superman, who died 1,000 years prior. There are no adult heroes, basically, in the Legion of Superheroes universe, so they are sort of the only people around. So they have all the responsibility of everyone. They don't have a Superman or a Spider-Man or Captain America to fall back on to help them. And so I think, to me, especially in the 80s, 90s, more modern-day Legion, that's such an intriguing concept and such a cool spin on the original kind of like, oh, I'm just a sidekick, But yeah, the legacy aspect and that sort of expanding the universe aspect, if we end up with, let's say, the more traditional DC history coming back, giving us original Wally West, who at this point is mid-late 20s, and long since being Kid Flash. And Impulse at this point would be pushing 18.
It'd be new Kid Flash.
20. Do we get a fifth generation of that Flash line, right? Fourth or fifth generation. And they continue that basically forever. At some point they kind of have to keep resetting that clock a little bit. But, it's the fact that these universes can grow and you continue with kids, right? I mean, it just gets new generation and new generation.
You brought it up earlier a little bit, which I kind of forgot to mention. Like, in the Asian books and Asian cultures, the books is all done by the same author and artist all the way through. So I love Dragon Ball with the kid growing up, having his own kid, the kid having some other issues, and there's a whole legacy thing, Same thing with Naruto. I loved his kid problems, but I also love his teenage problems as he's getting older, as to becoming when he's an adult almost, right? To me, the whole, it's just, you go on a journey with these heroes, and when they go through age, I feel like you're actually really following with them.
Well, and I feel too that adults have very, let's say, different problems from each other.
Yes.
Kids tend to always have the same problems, right? A lot of kids have the exact... Even if most people feel the same when they're a kid because they go through very similar situations, and even the most, good-looking kid is still going to have self-esteem issues. They're going to get picked on at some point in their life. When you become an adult, people, get diverged so vastly from each other. But when you're a kid, I feel like you're all sort of in that pool together a little bit. So it's so much easier for people to have sort of the same problems as a kid. So
it's a little more universal.
Yeah, I think so. Julian, fantastic topic. Always a favorite of mine.
Thank you.
So
it was really great to hear everybody talk about it. Like, I'm looking forward to listening to the finished one, listening to it again and once it gets posted.
So let's real quickly before we wrap up here.
Giant Days, by the way, is a really cool book. It feels very young. Yeah,
I was going to say, why don't we all go around and give one quick suggestion on a title, maybe either new or classic trade paperback that you think, hey, if you want to read a cool story about teenage heroes. Toby, let's start with Giant Days.
Giant Days. Well, I don't even think they're teenage. I think they're in college, but it feels.
But it's that
youngish.
Adult,
they're youngish.
Yeah.
The book is very piece of life story, but the way it's written is just so energetic and so fun. The art is really, really cool. So I really do recommend Giant. I really picked it up because the cover was really kind of plain and stylistic at the same time.
Yeah.
So it was a blind buy for me. I look at the cover. I was like, "Hey, Ryan, you ordering this? Yes or no? Just get me one." Yeah. And then I kind of just stuck with it because I really do like the energy and the flow of the book itself. Yeah. So Giant Days, Boom Studios.
Boom Studios.
Yeah, I really recommend that one. Yeah. I really like it.
Bryce, is there a teenage comic series you want to recommend or trade paperback or something?
Man, Toby brought it back up for me. I cannot stress enough how awesome Runaways was. I have does New Warriors have an omnibus?
Mm-hmm.
So
out of print.
In true Bryce fashion, I'll give two answers to your request for one answer. I think that the New Warriors first omnibus, the New Warriors first 25, maybe 30 issues.
The omnibus is the first 25.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Really, really good. So good. Mark Bagley, before he became this just mass production pile that he has become, in my opinion, recently. Back when he was in rare Spider-Man form. So for guilty pleasure, go read that New Warriors omnibus #1. For actual quality, I hate to say, Toby reminded me. Thank you, Runaways was so good. I think that you could all not to. I could go all day. That's what she said, or that's what he said. Ultimate Spider-Man, read the whole series. But if we're sticking to 1 or 2 volumes, then Runaways is, I think, probably something that very few people comparatively have read. I would highly recommend Runaways. Brian K. Vaughan. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't know if he's ever done anything bad.
My favorite cover on Runaways is actually where Molly, one of the younger girls, is holding up a truck just to save little ducklings going across the street.
Oh yeah, I remember that cover.
Absolutely love that cover.
That's awesome. Yeah. I read the hardcover, so I didn't see the individual covers, but that sounds awesome. So anyway, guilty pleasure, New Warriors, actual pleasure, Runaways. Go read them both. Go read all of Ultimate Spider-Man. Basically, all teenage superheroes. You can't go wrong until you become an old man, and then you're jaded. So.
Charlie, let's grab a suggestion from you. You got one? Kind of sprung it on you here.
When they first brought back sort of the Batman Beyond comic, not the one going on now, but they started with a mini series called Hush, if I recall.
Was that the first volume?
I think so.
It might be.
When they first brought it back.
Right.
All of that stuff was really good. I really enjoyed that. So especially if you liked the show, I still think that stuff holds up really well.
Yeah.
I love the Batman Beyond show. When they first came up with the concept, I really didn't think I would, but it was so brilliant.
Well, it's another one of those things of us older people at the time going, this is going to suck.
Yeah.
And then they actually delivered it.
Oh, it was so good. I love that show.
Brock, do you got one?
I would have to go with Mark Waid's Legion.
Okay.
I mean, it's a little bit later teens, early 20s. But,
yeah, same.
I would say that series probably for me was what kind of I really enjoyed. And you had mentioned the Johns Teen Titans run was really good too, and I read some of that. So for teenage stories, those would be my go-tos.
Teen Titans X-Men crossover.
The one shot.
Dude, yes, the one
stuff.
shot. George Perez, correct?
Yeah, Perez did that, yeah. Didn't he?
That was
Perez did the
awesome.
interior? Yeah, I'm pretty sure Perez did the interior.
All right, go find that.
Oh, wait,
because
that was an awesome one. I really like that one.
they are all teenagers, and that is like the best any cross-company crossover has ever been, short of Dark Claw? Was that his name, Dark Claw?
If anybody's
I'm
actually interested
joking.
in picking that up, I think we carry it here in the back issue bins for $10.
No, I'm sorry. It was,
$10.
Walt Simonson did the art on that. Yeah, it was Claremont and Walt Simonson. Yeah.
Well, yeah, so I knew it was Claremont because that was during the Golden Era.
Yeah.
Okay, not George Perez, huh? Okay,
No,
my
yeah, it
bad.
was Walt Simonson. Yep.
Walt Simonson. Anyway, the art is really, really good.
Yeah.
So whatever.
Well, that ties in with what my choice was going to be because DC has finally been releasing nice soft covers of George Perez and Marv Wolfman's New Teen Titans, which, to me, the pinnacle, right? I mean, that is the ultimate of the teen group. I mean, I love the New Warriors, but the New Warriors wouldn't exist if it wasn't for the New Teen Titans. And it was not only...
Is that true?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. It
didn't know
predates
that.
New Warriors by like a decade, or like 8 years or something.
I didn't know that.
The New Teen Titans is the perfect example of these kid heroes that have all grown up. I mean, it's obviously many of them are new characters, but a lot of them were pre-existing teenage heroes that grew up. They're the legacy characters. They're the expansion of the universe. And it was the best. I mean, it was X-Men and New Teen Titans were like the top two selling comics for years. And so,
Really?
Yeah.
New Teen Titans outsold Batman?
Oh yeah, New Teen Titans and Legion of Superheroes were like DC's top two books for a number of years.
Holy crap.
Well, you have to remember George Perez had come off like working with Marvel, and he was a big deal. And Marv Wolfman had done a bunch of big stuff, so this was a bit of a different time. And these were obviously a group of a bunch of characters that had pre-existed. Obviously, Cyborg and Raven, and a couple new characters. But to me, it's the pinnacle of accessible to everyone of every age. If you're a kid, you get one thing out of it. If you're an adult, you kind of get something else out of it. It's the model that, to me, everything else has been based on. I may personally like the Jeff Johns run better because I'm just a big fan of his work.
I
usually
really like the Jeff Johns run.
Yeah, a little bit of that, Bryce.
Yeah.
But
You like Jeff Johns with no pants.
But this was where it all, to me, started, right? I mean, Legion of Superheroes predates it, obviously, by a long time, but the pinnacle is that. And so you get the first 3 or 4 volumes are out right now in soft cover, which do the first, 30-some-odd issues. So.
Can I do it too, et cetera, real fast?
Very quick. Don't
Nobody
Bryce
can do
it.
2. Oh, wait.
Yeah,
Don't Bryce
I
it.
can. We Are Robin I really like because it reminds me a
serious?
lot.
Yep.
Yeah, it
Yep.
reminds me a lot of
Don't make
New
me pull up the
Warriors,
sales
basically.
charts. Don't make me pull up the sales
Is it
charts.
really
Yeah,
bad?
you're
Is
not
it really
gonna want-
bad?
yeah,
I love We Are Robin.
That's your recommendation?
I love We Are Robin.
Yeah,
Of the history
Yeah,
of teen
now you
books.
just made me forget the other thing I was going to try and say.
The history of teen books, We Are Robin is your
No, I'm
recommendation?
saying et cetera, as an add-on at the end because I failed to mention it earlier. But now I forgot what the other thing I was trying to say.
It must have been really good.
I really liked at the same time the Teen Titans came out for the Jeff Johns run. There was another book that came out. It was called The Outsiders. Not Your Outsiders, Brock.
No.
It is a grown-up Nightwing kind of rebuilding the Outsiders in his image. So
Yeah.
I really thought that was a cool book too, with Arsenal on the team.
Younger, again, not
Yeah,
It was more of a
age, but
20
but it was like,
early
but to me,
20-something.
that was like, the Titans were the younger ones this time around, and the original Titans kind of graduated to go into like outsider realm, kind of Black Ops-ish area. So
yeah.
I thought that was a really cool book too.
Yep. Very good
That was
stuff.
it. I remembered it.
How about Avengers Arena? Said
No.
nobody.
They killed Darkhawk in that issue. Fuck that book.
Yeah, fuck that book.
Yes.
He'll be back.
All right, Julian, thank you very, very much for being on this episode, and thank
did we
you
get Julian's
for your
answer?
Great suggestion.
Nope.
Oh, did we not?
Yeah.
Julian,
no.
Julian has to give his.
Sorry. You started it, but then I know you have to end it.
I want to let Julian know you have finally experienced Ryan Higgins forgetting to let you say something.
No. You started it, then we finished, and then we're back.
Yeah,
so what's
he'll let you
suggestion?
finish, Julian.
So, there wasn't a lot of Young Justice that was published in trade form, but if you want to find a really good story that you don't have to know the entire backstory, and I mean,
I know which
I'm
one you're
looking for an
saying.
entire run. It's Young Justice: Sins of
Yes!
Yeah.
I love that book.
It's
out of print, though, isn't it?
It might be. All the teenage heroes get turned into adults, and all the adult heroes get turned into teens.
love that
and
book.
It's this really nice
cool.
juxtaposition.
really
good
wasn't
stuff.
that Humberto Ramos back then?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a fantastic book.
Yeah.
Yep.
Little teenage Wally West is some great stuff, and little teenage Kyle Rayner, changing his costume in every single panel is a nice little touch.
That was a real fun book.
That was a great book.
Young Justice sometimes got a little too jokey for me, but that said, most of Young Justice I really, really liked.
Yeah.
Hey, is Squirrel Girl a teenager? How old is Squirrel
Sure,
Girl?
she's at college, but I mean, I'd totally call her a teenage hero.
Speaking
Yeah,
of young
100%.
Humberto, I really liked Out There. That was a cliffhanger book for a while. Again, also
Vamp-
teenage
no, it's
kids.
not.
Yeah, I really
Crimson.
liked that
He's
one.
thinking Crimson is the other one. Yeah,
Yeah.
Out There.
Oh, speaking of Umberto, can we talk about how good X-Men is?
Nope. So thank you.
Out of time.
Thank you. Yeah, we are way over time. Thank you very, very much, Julian, for being on. We're going to promote a few things here, but let's let's promote Julian Titus and the Nerds Without Pants podcast.
No pants.
On pixelbit.com. I want to make sure that's right. Julian, why don't you give us a little breakdown of your podcast here for people that might not have heard it?
Sure. Well, we are ostensibly a video game podcast, but we talk about other nerdy things. Usually what we try to do is we'll do a consumption junction part of the show where we're just talking about whatever media we've consumed in the last couple weeks. And then we try to do like a video game related topic that I try to keep in a way that, if you listen to an episode now or 2 years from now, it's still going to hold up. We're kind of in the procedure of changing the format a little bit, so I definitely recommend people check out the show. You can actually help us decide how we're going to change the format and stuff like that. We're going to try to do like some games now and some trivia and things like that, so to kind of break up the show into more digestible segments.
Cool.
But we've been going on for over 3 years. We've got over 80 regular episodes and then like another almost 20 special episodes. So
Nice.
We've been around for the long haul, and I mean, it is a Skype podcast, but I do pride myself in putting a lot of time and care to make sure that it sounds as good as it possibly can. So please don't let that dissuade you from checking it out. We have a lot of fun on that show, and I recommend, I beg of you and implore you to check it out, even just once.
I've listened to a few podcasts that do the Skype, and as long as you're smart about how you record, you almost can't even tell. They do a good job with it. So as long as you're doing it right, so no, you guys do a good job. So
thank you.
we will. We have to thank some other people. We can't forget all our good friends. Albert Soy is at Plan Everywhere. Make sure you check that out on iTunes. Jody Lawson, he's got that Canon, the Triad Comics Anthology at triadcomicstudios.com. Make sure you pick a few of those books up. John Nesmith, his podcast, Drinking with Batman.libsyn.com. Make sure you check that out. Get a drink with Batman, of course. Peter Blanco, he's got that YouTube channel, Nerd It Up TV. That's on YouTube. Check that out for all their content. Of course, Julian Titus and the Nerds Without Pants podcast. So a couple people last week, we were switching some computers around, and not all my content came over with me. So we forgot to thank a few of our backers from Patreon and promote their material. Joshua Redding, who's a longtime listener, always talking with him. He's got a podcast called Tangent Break. Okay. So make sure you check that out. He's got a couple novels that are on Amazon right now, too, that you should definitely check out. And then Amazon, I haven't checked these out specifically, but I know Amazon a lot of times gives you a little previews, so you can go on and check those out. It's called Twilight of Ages and Dawn of Darkness. Those guys are on Amazon. Mario Miranda has got the Mild Fuzz Podcast Network, mildfuzz.com. And if you just do a YouTube search for Mild Fuzz, they have kind of a longer YouTube name, but search Mild Fuzz, you can get that real easy. And, of course, Manoa Place. They don't want to promote anything. They just love giving us money. If you love giving us money, you can do that at patreon.com/comicconspiracy. Thank every single person so much for all their donations. Helps keep this podcast going, gives us some money to buy some books to talk about and buy some pizza and
hosting costs.
And buys me a nice little extender for my headphone set so we can all listen to Julian here on Skype. So as always,
hopefully this podcast sounds good.
Hopefully it does. Obviously this podcast exists to promote the store, so
I want to ask Julian a question real quick.
Sure.
Julian.
Yes, sir.
Would you purchase a Comics Conspiracy t-shirt?
Oh, Jesus, here we go. You mean the...
Yes.
What about the Comic Conspiracy podcast t-shirt?
Both. Actually. Oh, and I got to say, kudos on the new logo for the podcast.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yes, thank you.
It's not official yet, is it?
I do put it up, yeah. I mean, it's a little work in progress, but I think we got everything done.
I got a text from Trip going, did you guys change the logo? Because you look like iFanboy.
Our good friend Trevor made a new logo for us. The old one we've obviously been running for quite a long time, something a little different. We're going to have kind of some variations on that of the current logo that we're testing for some possible merchandise that you could buy. We're still kind of working on it, but if you like the new logo, there again a variation of it, and it's as these things happen, it tends to be a little work in progress. So
I know he told me you rejected a few of them.
I did not reject a few of them. I simply made the choice to remove a very phallic-looking letter I, and that's it. Brock was a big fan. Maybe that'll just be the logo. Just the big schlong looking eye, and that will just be like on the T-shirt. It's just a big eye.
You know what you should do? You should have just a big schlong looking thing, and then on the little rim around the mic, that's where you have just a tiny
the little text.
like text.
Yeah, maybe we'll do that, or maybe we won't.
I'm gonna go in the won't category.
Yes. But now keep your eyes open for that stuff.
All right. So just so you know, there's two. That's a sale right there.
It's two. All right. Geekbox.net and iTunes is where you can go to find our podcasts and rate and review us on there. Julian, I'm assuming you were on iTunes as well.
Yes, I am. And we would love rates and reviews as well, and subscriptions.
Any other, because I know we do, we're up on a few these other podcast network things. Do you promote any of that stuff either? Or you pretty much just iTunes?
No, currently I'm just iTunes and then through our website at Pixelbit.
All right.
I do have one last question, Julian. Which are your favorite teenage superhero books? Because I don't think you ever told us.
Oh, well, the older ones, it was Dark Hawk for me. That was the first one. And then that led me into Generation X and Gen 13.
Gen 13!
Oh, 13! All right, here we go. Another 20 minutes of the podcast.
The best team's called Campbell art after the Jim Lee run.
Toby forgot all about Gen 13.
Oh, my God. I love that book.
Yeah, so that was some great stuff. But I think really for me, the two that stand out to the test of time for me is, like I said, Young Justice and Invincible. Those are really the two books that really resonate with me in a big way.
Yeah. Cool. I'm glad I asked this question. Oh, man. Gen 13.
I think you were faded a little bit when he was talking about that earlier. I think you missed Gen 13.
Did he say Gen 13?
No.
I was like, shit, I really missed that.
Ryan's messing with you.
No, he started giving his answer, and then you got really, really excited for his Young Justice.
Julian, very important question. Which is better, Marvel or DC?
Oh, Jesus. So don't forget the Comic Conspiracy at Geekbox.net is where you can email us.
Bryce does want an answer, by the way.
If you want to answer Bryce's question, which is better, Marvel versus DC, you can hit up Bryce on Twitter. At Bryce Larsen. At Larsen Bryce.
There you go.
But of course, the Comic Conspiracy Geekbox.net is where you can go to to contact us with all your great questions, or the contact forum. Patreon.com/Comic Conspiracy. You can go donate some money. Digital.comicsconspiracy.biz is where you can go to get all your digital comics. All these books that we've mentioned are available on our digital comic website for the most part. Go on there and check some of them out if you like them. Conspirator Brock, that's Brock's blog. Video Pull List. Infinite Long Box podcast and The Wanderers in the Fourth Dimension podcast. That's where Charlie can go and he talk about his comic books and his Doctor Who and his other wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey stuff. That's all on there.
Timey-wimey.
Etsy.com/shop/Leanne Hill Art. That's where you can go. My wonderful wife, that's all her art's up on there. I'm Ryan Higgins, Brock Sager, Larsen Bryce is Bryce Larsen, Toby's Toby XI, Charlie's Insanity and Chaos. The store is Comics Con Store if you want to go on there and follow that. Julian, you want to pimp a site, past your podcast, a Twitter handle, anything?
You can find me on Twitter at Julian_Titus, and you can also find the podcast at NWPcast.
Fantastic.
See, his podcast has a Twitter handle.
I got a Twitter account. I got a store account. I got like this. I got my Roy.
It's a lot
my
to mess
Roy
with.
flips.
Is
I
that
got
a
to
Gene
keep
Silent
up.
Bob Strike Back thing? NWP. I can't say the first.
Nerds Without Pants.
I can't say the first word with puppets.
Oh yeah. Geekbox, Comedy Button, Good
That's
Job
from
Brain,
Jason
All Talk
Bob.
Podcast, Manga
That's awesome.
Machinations. Those are all the podcasts in our wonderful network, along with, of course, don't forget about Nerds Without Pants. You have to go listen to that. So, Julian, once again, fantastic to have you on.
It was wonderful to be on. Thank you.
No problem. And we're going to go ahead in this podcast. So thank you, everyone, and we'll catch you next week.